No members of the public. Draw your attention to the fire regulations that are the same as always. Can I ask you to turn your phones to silent or off? Introduction for the sake of the broadcast. Sitting in front of me is Beth Howland-Smith, the Development Control Manager, Louise Jandel, the Area Team Manager for Southern and Western, and Chris Turner, our Senior Planning Officer, who's going to talk shortly on the agenda item. Moving on then, item number 1, confirm the minutes meeting held on 26th of September 2018. They have been on the table for more than half an hour. Is your wish I sign them as true record? Thank you very much. Apologies for absence, Emma.
We have apologies from councillors John Fraser, Stephen Hill, Mike Hodge, Julia Potts and John Ward.
And Emma, disclosure of interest.
None prior to the meeting, but I believe Farnham Town councillors declare a non-pecuniary interest in the application.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, item Bravo 1 is on my road, so I shall be leaving the chamber while that's discussed.
Thank you for attending. Question from members of the public?
None received, Chairman.
Question from members, Emma?
None received.
Any relevant updates, Beth?
Thank you, Chairman. No.
And performance against government targets, Beth again? Or Louise, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. As set out on page 5 of your agenda, as you can see, we are performing excellently, both in terms of speed and quality, and there is little change from when this was reported to you last time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Site inspections arising from this meeting. Well, we had a very wet one yesterday, wet and cold. Applications. This is B1, therefore not subject to public speaking. WA 2018-1396, New Horizon 1, Pine Grove, Lower Bourne, GU 103RG. The proposed erection of extensions and alterations as amplified by plans received on the 24th of October. And Chris to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide a verbal update, in the agenda report where it makes reference to number 9 Pine Grove, that should read as number 6 Pine Grove. The application site is located on the eastern side of Pine Grove. It comprises a bungalow and the area is characterised as residential. Photograph A in the top left shows the northern end of the front elevation where the first storey extension is proposed and the 2-storey extension would also be visible on this point. Photo B on the middle left shows the front elevation from Pine Grove. Photograph C on the bottom left shows the neighbour to the west at number 6. Photograph D on the top right shows a side elevation looking towards the neighbour at the west. Photograph E on the middle right shows the northern elevation whereby the 2-storey element would be located. Photograph F on the bottom right shows the property from the rear garden beyond the existing roof to the west. The proposed first-storey extension and 2-storey extension would be located towards the northern end of the dwelling here. It would measure 9.6 metres in width by 6.3 metres in depth and would have a height of 6.1 metres. The proposed 2-storey side extension element would measure 2.9 metres in width by 2.8 metres in depth and would have a height of 6 metres. The single-storey element on the southern corner would measure 4.5 metres in width by 4.7 metres in depth and would have an eaves height of 2.9 metres. The proposed first-storey extension would provide 2 bedrooms. You can see on the floor plan there the two proposed bedrooms. And that is a section to demonstrate the difference in land levels on this street. In conclusion, officers consider that proposals would have an acceptable design and would not have a harmful impact on the adjoining occupiers. Matters of principal and technical opinion are the biodiversity and the compliance with the habitat regulations, effect on the SPA and impact on trees, and the matters of judgment are design and impact on visual amenity and the impact on residential amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. Members, Councillor Coburn.
Yes, I thought I probably ought to go first as I called this in very deliberately and asked for a site visit. Unfortunately, the notice that was given was not very long and needless to say, not many people turned up at all. But this is a judgment call and a difficult judgment call, which is why really you needed to see the site visit. Could I go back to those, I think it's the first set of photographs, Chris? If you look, you can see this, well, there's two things. If you look at the location map while you're looking at that on page 7, you get the impression that Pine Grove is a road about the same width as Lodge Hill Road. Lodge Hill Road is a 2-lane road and quite wide and quite busy. Pine Grove is single track. It's typical of the Bourne. It's a track and, you know, that's all it is. And because, again, of the topography of the area, if you look at C, that's number 6, sits way down the hill. The hill goes down to the Bourne Green, basically. This is the wooded hillside that comes up to Lodge Hill Road. And if you look at E, you get some idea of where the places, the 3 bungalows that were built that are almost identical, they sit, if you like, sort of halfway up the hill. They've flattened out a bit, and then you've still got the wooded hillside at the back. So I went to one appeal in Frensham Vale, where the appellant was trying to argue that there was no such thing as pines in the Bourne. You know, it wasn't an indigenous species and we shouldn't be protecting them. And, you know, I did point out that I live in Pine Ridge Drive and, in fact, my fellow councillor lived in Pine Grove. We do have pine ridges. That is the whole point of the Bourne. There's an awful lot of them. The Bourne Woods goes up. It's a pine ridge, as is this. And so we start here with a road that is in somewhat typical of the Bourne and in other ways very atypical. There's only 6 houses on this road. There's as you go in, there's the 3 bungalows. This one is number 1. They're all the same design as you can see in B. They've all had extensions and nobody has any problem with these extending. They've extended in both directions, they've extended backwards. Nobody has gone up into 2 stories. So the pattern you have on the left-hand side of the road as you go down, I'm not good on my norths and souths, is for the 3 bungalows. You've got a house at the end that you can't see, and then the 2 houses, 5 and 6, on the right-hand side of the road going down towards are much lower than the 3 bungalows. So you've got a difficult topography when it comes to developing. Let me make it clear, I have no argument with anybody expanding their house. I mean, we've all done it. And I do worry about this particular extension for 2 reasons. Well, 3 if you count both houses. I think there is a question of overlooking here. We stood, in fact, we went up that path, if that's the one, yesterday, to try and get as high as we could to see whether or not we could see into the bedrooms of number 6. And, you know, as I say, we were nothing like the height, the eventual height of these windows, and you could see a fair good chunk of the bedroom windows. Of that there was no doubt. The distance, I think, is just about on our guidelines. The distance to Lyman, which is the house in Lodge Hill Road, is the one that the officers have recommended perhaps doing some obscure glazing in the stairwell, because again there's an element of overlooking. It's an unbalanced judgment, and I wanted it brought into committee so that you could all have a look at it. What you will see, could I have a look at or could you all look at your side one? Chris, could we go back to the side this is the first thing you'll see, isn't it, as you come down the road? The stairwell is the first thing you'll see, isn't it?
Page 10.
So, you know, what you've got at the moment is your flat bungalows sitting back in the hillside, and you're going to have this two-storey extension, which isn't anywhere else in Pine Grove. You know, at the moment there is nothing of that height. It's 6.5, did you say? I wrote it somewhere. 6.1 metres, but actually the height over the road is much more than that, isn't it? Because all these bungalows are elevated because of the land. So, I mean, what is the actual height from the road when you look up at this extension? Must be much more than 6.1. Are you with me from down at the bottom here, you know, from the road and the neighbour opposite? What do we know what that height is?
I don't have the precise height.
I remember doing this at school and working out what the height was, but I can't.
I could guesstimate, given the height of the person and the height of the building being 6.1.
I mean, it's 8 or 9 metres, isn't it?
Yeah, being around 8 metres.
Yeah, 8 or 9 metres. So I wanted to bring it into committee for it to be aired and for, you know, you to look at it and decide whether or not there is an issue with this. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm sorry I had other commitments and was unable to make the site visit yesterday, but I did go along and do my own drive-by shooting today, and so I can understand exactly what the Vice Chairman is saying about this. I share the concerns. Actually, from the pictures that are in front of us, I would add to what Councillor Coburn has said in respect of design. It looks... I know the Bourne has got some fairly modern and modernist buildings, but I'm not sure that I would put this in what's being proposed into that category myself. It doesn't look very nice from, and of course the pictures that we've got here perhaps don't do justice to it. The pictures that I saw on the website and the application perhaps don't do it justice. I don't know in real life, and I know that I think we've pointed out before that when the things are put up onto the screen there, it's actually like a 16:9 put into a 14, sort of like, so everything's squashed up and things look higher than they really are when they're up on the screen there. But I'm not very happy with the design here. And when I drove by, I thought, well, there isn't a major problem here, because all that number 6, the upside down number 9 people opposite have got to do is to let this hedge grow another metre or two and everything will be fine. But I understand they don't have the option on that anyway. It's somebody else's hedge. And so I thought that the overlooking problem could have been solved by that relatively simply. Now I understand where the problem comes from, because they don't have control over that, and they certainly wouldn't be able to put up a sort of 4-metre high fence in front of them if that hedge were to be taken down or whatever. So I'd want confirmation of that from officers possibly, because as I wasn't at the site visit, I wasn't able to ask that. I didn't realise, but that is my understanding, that hedge that's in front of number 6 and partially screens them and isn't under their control. So I can understand their concerns. It is a judgment. I don't like the design, and from taking the Vice Chairman's advice on the view, which I think has been echoed in a few letters that emails that we've all received. I'm inclined to think that we should be asking for a better design for the 2-storey element to be set back and well, more like it was in the original applications that were consented many, many years ago, 15 years ago nearly, I think there was a consent granted. Those have obviously run out. It's brought that right forward in this application, hasn't it? The design of it has brought this 2-storey element right forward. There's a reason why those were bungalows in the first place. Yeah, I share the difficulties that our Vice Chairman has with this, and I'm inclined to ask that they come back with a better design, and certainly if we're going to have some obscure glazed windows to the north, when we'd want them to the west. if I've got my thingy the right way round. Is it the other, or am I upside down with my 99s?
West, I think.
Yes, I don't know. I'll listen to what other members say. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Just a mention of TPOs, Chris?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Well, I don't know the precise ownership of that hedge, but that is TPO'd along the front in front of number 6. And just to reiterate that that separation distance remains 23 metres, which does accord with the guidance within the residential extensions SPD for separation distances.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Frost.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It looks more like an office block than it does a house that people are going to live in and make their home. But within the Bourne, we do have some rather strange building design. And therefore, I don't think that we are asked to agree or disagree with this particular application. And if we don't like the design, then we've got to refuse it. And they've got to come back with another application. But I'm not sure that, bearing in mind the different elements we have in the Bourne, I'm not sure that we can actually say we don't like the design. You know, it's very similar to some of the other buildings in the Bourne. I do, however, I know it's on a very large plot of land, but I do think that the building itself is rather overbearing. You know, if you look at the size of the other buildings that run along Lodge Hill Road, which is next to this plot, they're quite tiny compared to this building. And that's the first thing that I thought of that was, well, it's a bit overbearing, it's a bit large. It's not too large, I suspect, for the plot, but for the area on which it's based, I think it is a bit too large, bearing in mind the size of the other houses. I think this is a very difficult one, and I think it could end up being an unbalanced one. I just don't know. I mean, I'm in a quandary on it. Normally, I have a view one way or the other when I've read the papers. And I do know Pine Grove, and it is rather like an unmade lane, and it is rather narrow. So I just don't know one way or the other, but I don't think we could refuse it, or send it back on the grounds of not liking the design. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just have clarification? I'm trying to find it, what the actual side of the building's made from. We've got wood. Is that, and then is that just slabs of concrete? The reason why I asked, Mr. Chairman, is because I totally agree with what Councillor Coburn says, and actually one of the letters of objection stating that of the impact on the street scene of the materials that the building might be made from, but I just would like some clarification on that one.
Louise?
Thank you. Just to clarify that the entire building is going to be constructed from render, timber cladding and cladding. If members are particularly concerned about the material details, what we could do is amend condition 2 to require full details of the materials to be submitted and approved by us to include samples so that we can ensure that those materials are of a high quality and in keeping with the surrounding area. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Frost, you want to come back?
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chairman. This timber cladding worries me because it seems to be all the rage now that dwellings have all this timber cladding. But the first building that I came across in Waverley it was Four Boys, which is in Waden Road, and it's a block of flats, and that is timber cladding, and it's been on there now for about 5, 6, 7 years, and it looks terrible. And it does deteriorate. And if this is what you want in the Bourne, then I think we've got a problem.
Councillor Pritchard.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just going back on that one. So there's timber cladding, but what's this white speckly wall on the lower part of the building, it doesn't just, yeah.
And that's render.
All right.
Anyone else want to come in before we move to the recommendation? Councillor Coburn.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Mr. Chairman. I just really wanted to say, what is so difficult with this is that the part of this extension that could prove difficult, the part with the obscure glazing because it probably overlooks Lyman, the part that is large and comes forward, is what you're going to see first in the street scene when you go down Pine Grove. It's not going to sit amongst lots of other different ones. And I think, you know, I'm not, as I say, against the residents here extending. I just feel they have space to do a better job than this that won't have the same impact on the street scene. As Councillor Frost said, it's not a question of personal taste in terms of design. We're not allowed to be quite so subjective as that. But in terms of the impact on the street scene, in terms of bulk and mass, then I think we have got a justification if we feel that it is going to have too strong an impact and that it could be softened, perhaps set further back. You know, if we don't like this one, then, as Councillor Frost said, we either accept it or we don't. I mean, that's our choice.
If there are no further comments, members, officers, no. Move to the recommendation. Recommendation is that subject conditions 1 to 4 and informative 1 permission be granted. Those in favour, please show. Those against?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Can I have an alternative proposal, please? Councillor Coburn.
I'm sorry, Chairman, that permission be refused.
Seconder, please. Councillor Frost, thank you very much. Noted. And then reasoning, please. Sorry, Councillor Coburn.
I think the overbearing nature of the two-storey element of this extension will have an adverse effect on the street scene. I think there will be the danger of overlooking to Lyman, hence the use of the obscure glazing, which I think should be designed out of the next iteration, as it were. I don't know what else. I'll leave somebody else to add something else.
Well, yes, Chairman, if I can refer you to page 13, which was the reason for refusal for the 16 years ago, the 2002, right in the middle of the page. It's got the proposal by virtue of its disproportionate scale design and unsatisfactory relationship and whatever. I think that we can take something from there, but particularly I would refer you to page 16, where we're talking about FNP8, policy FNP8, and part C. The development in this location will be permitted where it demonstrates the design, layout and setting of the proposal will not have any adverse effect upon the setting and amenities of adjoining residential properties and the wider residential character of the area. And I think that one sums it up quite well. So I'm not as hot on these as Councillor Coburn is, of course, but I can read. So,
Louise.
Just would firstly like to make a point in relation to the overlooking to laymen at the side. I would caution members that it would be very difficult to defend a reason for refusal when these windows are obscure glazed, so there would not actually be any overlooking. I would suggest that you would have a much stronger case to stick to the design issues. And if members are happy with that, I would suggest the following wording based on the comments that have been made this evening, and that would be: the proposed development, by reason of its scale, bulk and mass, would result in an unduly prominent appearance that would materially detract from the character and appearance of the surrounding area, in conflict with policy TD1 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan 2018, policies FNP1, FNP8 and FNP16 of the Farnham Neighbourhood Plan 2017, retained policies D1 and D4 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan 2002, and finally paragraphs 122, 127 and 130 of the MPPF 2018. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Louise.
What do we do with after?
Yeah. Well, yes. Members, you've heard the recommendation to refuse. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of refusal?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Permission be refused. And that concludes our meeting. Before we go...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go and see if he's hiding. Probably has gone home.
I think he's gone home.
Hey! Yes, members, this is the last meeting we're going to have the pleasure of Louise Yandel's company. She's leaving Waverley at the next month. I'd just like to thank her for her expertise, her charm, and general leading of the Southern and Western area teams. I'd just like to record that, please. It's my view. I hope it's yours as well. So, agreed. Okay. Thank you all very much indeed. And thank you, Louise.
And I think we should give her the same round of applause.
All the very best.